On our Twitter poll question, we're asking, do you believe the African Union has the might to stop human rights violations in the region? Do you believe the African Union has the might to stop the human rights violations in the region? Do let us know what you think about this. You can tweet us using the hashtag Worldview or at KTN News, my Twitter handle at JoyDorinBira. Let's now cruise over. We're in studio now. We actually have guests. One who is a family member of the South Sudan 4 and another from Burundi. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you in studio.
Thank you so much as well.
Well, when we talk about the black and white vigil, I guess, there's quite a lot that comes to mind. So allow me to introduce my guests. We have Marie-Louise Barikapo, who is the chair of the Women and Girls Movement for Peace in Burundi. And we have Tejal Gadda,
Yes.
who is from the Free South Sudan 4 pressure group, both here to talk to us about the two countries, Burundi and South Sudan. Thank you both so much for joining us. I'll start with you. The black and white vigil, what should we expect from it? What is the message that we're trying to put across?
The black and white vigil, what we are trying to put forward is the need for solidarity, the need for all the populations of the region, of our countries, to understand that what is happening in South Sudan, what is happening in Burundi, is also their business. Mm-hmm. It is not only the business of those who are undergoing it, but it is the business of the community, because there cannot be any development of the community when there is no peace in one country or another. Mm-hmm. You cannot say that your body is faring well when one organ is not well. Mm-hmm. So the fact that there are two countries in the community that are in crisis, and in very, very bad crisis, it is something that should be of concern for the whole community. So with the vigil, we want to call upon the population. We also want to call upon the leaders. We want really to sensitize and say, let us come together, join hands, go hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, together, so that our voice can be higher, so that our message can be heard, so that our leaders also can feel questioned,
Right,
and called to act, because now it looks like they are not there.
Well, the absence of leaders, and I guess this now ties into what's happening in South Sudan with all the crises that we are seeing one after the other. When it comes to the Free South Sudan 4 pressure group, you are a family member, Tejal. How has it been? It's been 2 long years, and there doesn't seem to be any green light or any light at the end of the tunnel. What or how does this make you feel?
I think it's been really frustrating for us. Mm-hmm. One, because while they were arrested, it was, of course, an illegal arrest, and then they were detained for 9 months. They were taken to court. When they were taken to court, we were actually confident that we would be able to get these boys back home. But that did not happen because of the unfair trial that they went through. So even with no mention in court, they were actually sentenced to life imprisonment. We then went to the Supreme Court, and we lodged an appeal saying what the decision was not rightful. On 12th of April, we actually, this year, so after about 1.5 years, we actually managed to get an appeal result, which was they quashed the case. So that means the sentence was quashed. So they're no longer prisoners, but they've been held on remand. Mm-hmm. That was a new hope. That was a relief that, we would now be able to get these boys back home. But only to realize, because of the crisis going on in South Sudan, it has also affected the case, because the judiciary system is actually on strike. And they're refusing to go back to work because of the whole crisis, and they're asking for the Chief Justice to step down, mm-hmm. which means that there is no retrial for these 4 Kenyans. So while they're not prisoners, they are still held in jail for a crime they have not committed. And it's 2 years on the 29th of May.
So do you also get the feeling that there is an absence of leadership in South Sudan that is making it even more difficult
Absolutely.
for this to be sorted out? And do you even think that the African Union per se can even, to an extent, try to solve this problem?
I mean, absolutely. I would say this confidently because when the case was, so our lawyer was threatened at gunpoint when we were in trial. But ever since the court quashed the case and asked for a retrial, our lawyer who's representing the Kenyans, his license was cancelled. So he's barred from practice. Again, a politically motivated decision. So they're trying to frustrate this case and the Kenyans as well, that we're not able to resolve this issue. Going back to the African Union, it's not just about the 4 Kenyans. We've lost 100 truck drivers in the year of 2016. We just recently lost 4 Kenyans who were working for an NGO as well last month. And it's been a continuous target towards these Kenyans. And we feel that the leadership is not doing adequately enough to be able to resolve this issue. And it gets worse as days pass by.
So there's an African Union summit, rather East African summit that is happening here. And we are hoping that they're going to tackle some really key issues that are affecting the East African community. And of course, insecurity, instability happens to be one of the core issues. But there are some critics who are saying that this summit in Nairobi doesn't seem to be tackling the issues that are at the core heart of East Africans per se. What would you say to that, Marie?
Well, I was also excited to hear that finally the East African Community Summit is going to take place. And I wanted really to see the agenda. And when I saw the agenda, yes, there are issues on trade, integration, and all these things. But I think what East African community needs most now is peace and security. You cannot hold a summit in a community where 2 countries are in crisis and not have anything on peace and security. Yes, it can happen probably in closed sessions and on a separate agenda.
Yeah.
But I think we need also to be reassured that they are concerned, and we want to see it and to know that when they are going to meet, they are going to talk about the peace and security of the population in the region. And it's really a matter of concern, because what is happening in South Sudan, what is happening in Burundi, nothing is new. It has been going on and on and on. And as civil society organizations, whether we are from Burundi or even from the region, everybody has really been doing advocacy. We have spoken, we have called upon them, we have sent messages, statements, and so forth, so they know what is happening. They
Do
know
you think
yes.
that we are having some sort of fatigue? The other East African countries are fatigued with the crises that are going on in South Sudan and Burundi, because we seem to have the same issue time and time again. And maybe they've tried and they just don't seem to see any headway. So which way forward if the leaders in those countries do not want change?
There is a headway. There is a headway. But it requires the will and the commitment. Because, for instance, I can talk more about Burundi because that is the case I know most.
Yes.
East African Community Summit met last year. And they appointed former President Mkapa as the facilitator in the dialogue. But this man has been struggling to get these people to sit together. Pierre Nkurunziza doesn't want to sit with them. But we have not heard a single time where the East African Community Summit sent him a message or sent him somebody to say, look, we cannot allow you to continue like this. Your people are dying. Your country is being destroyed. You should do something. Nobody, we have never heard them. So it means there are solutions. But those solutions, they need people who feel concerned, who show commitment, who show willingness to do it.
Right, but if you recall, I think the East African community heads of state met in Bujumbura. I think that's when the last peace talks were held in Bujumbura, and it just seemed like, there was no headway. Either the president of Burundi, that is Pierre Nkurunziza, was not really forthcoming with, peace talks, and then everything just went out, and we never got any headway thereafter, and it has since been the case. So are human rights organizations putting as much pressure on the leadership of Burundi to actually caution and ask the questions, ask the hard questions, like, this is what we need, this is what we want, this is where we should go?
You know what? the leadership of Burundi is part of the problem. So we cannot expect the solution to come from the one who is putting things in trouble. So I always give this example. Suppose you are head of a family and you have your brothers, you all live together. And one day you hear the house of your brother, people are screaming in the house. He has closed all the doors. They are screaming because he's killing his wife and children. Aren't you going to break into the house and take him out? I don't think it is impossible for the leaders of the East African community if they want to help Burundi. It had happened before in 1996, 97, 98. There was another president. There was a trouble like this. And they were saying negotiation. He was saying, I cannot go to negotiate with those killers. They put sanctions on him.
Yeah.
He went to do negotiations. These are the same people we are expecting them to act. They are not acting, not that they don't know how they could do it. They know very well. I just wonder, what are they waiting for? People are dying in Burundi by thousands. How many do we have to lose before people decide to say, now enough is enough?
Great.
Because for me, that stage we have passed it already. But it's like African Union is looking at East African community. United Nations Security Council is waiting for East African community. East African community is not moving. So, yes, our friends, civil society organizations, we support us, we do vigil, candle vigil, and we do many, but our leaders need to listen to us and to hear our cry.
All right. And so when you actually look at the entire East African community, it's sort of, from what you're saying, it sort of gives the impression that maybe the East African community integration is more toothless, because if they up until now have not really done much to change what's happening in Burundi or even in South Sudan, then probably we should now focus on what the African Union is going to do. Is that something that we are looking at for both situations in Burundi and in South Sudan?
The only thing is that I don't want to give up to East African community.
Yeah.
I believe in East African community.
Yeah.
And it is possible to build a really strong community. We have all what it takes to have a strong community. And there is no reason why ECOWAS can do it and the EAC cannot do it.
Right.
So I think it's just a matter of willingness.
All right. Tujal, I want to hear from you as well. Has the Kenyan government reached out in trying to bring the South Sudan fall back home? And if yes, do you think that they are doing enough, or could it be better?
We've had a meeting with Foreign Affairs, and the same brief feedback that we received from them is that they're using diplomacy to be able to sort this issue out.
Right.
But my challenge is, it's been 2 years. And 2 years, the only feedback we've received is diplomacy. But the country is in crisis. I mean, if you can see, there's famine. There's likelihood of genocide in that country. And our constant fear is that the Kenyan government is not doing enough to be able to bring its citizens back. And it's not only for the 4. I talk on behalf of every Kenyan citizen that is actually in South Sudan and is suffering, because we don't know the fate of that country. And as my friend has said here, until and unless our leaders do not take a strong stand towards it. I mean, we all know Kenya is a very friendly country to South Sudan. Kenya has played a huge role even during their negotiations that they had. So I'm sure there's so much more that we can be able to do, but it's just the reluctancy, which we're not. Yes, right. which needs to stop. They need to take a stand to protect every citizen. I mean, they don't deserve to die.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us on this edition of Worldview. We were speaking to Marie-Louise Barikako, who is the chair of the Women and Girls Movement for Peace in Burundi. And we were also speaking to Tujal Gadda, who is from the Free South Sudan 4 pressure group. Thank you both for joining us. And, well, now let's move on and take a